Good morning. Today's recording is a pre-recorded interview with Nicole Christina, who is the founder of Zestfulaging, and she's all the way in New York this morning, so I'm really looking forward to talking to her today. This chat does come with a trigger warning because we will be talking about some eating disorder issues and body issues, so if this is something that you need to be aware of, but I'm really looking forward to talking to Nicole, who is a experienced psychotherapist. Good morning, Nicole.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. It's lovely to talk to you.
Oh, yes, it's lovely to hear you again.
I know we've already had conversations when I actually came on your podcast, which was fantastic. How do people that don't know you, how do you describe yourself?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Well, depending on who I'm speaking with, like if it's a client who wants services, I don't tell them I'm a professional podcaster. I tell them a psychotherapist. But I have a full-time psychotherapy practice. I've been doing that for 30 years. I specialize in eating disorders. And I live right next to a big university. So I always joke that there's a tunnel from Syracuse University to my office because they just
Wouldn't that be nice?
yeah, they just slide down the tunnel into my office. Not so much anymore; it's all telehealth. But I'm also really devoted and really passionate about my podcast. So now I've been introducing myself as a professional podcaster because as you know, it's not that hard to start one up. It's harder to keep it going because it's a lot of work. But I like the idea of doing it and saying it's professional. I mean, I do have sponsorship, but it's professional because I put my whole heart into it, and I want to give it its propers, as we say.
Yes, and I love the title Zestfulaging. I think it's fantastic. Where did you come up with the inspiration for that?
Well, I wish it was a funnier story or more, but ironically, my husband, we were sitting around saying, "What could it be? What could it be?" And I'm the wordsmith in the family, and he just said, "What about zestful?" And I thought, "Yeah, that's it. That's. I love the feel of it. It's kind of juicy, and it started off as interviewing women middle age and older, but then I realized I had a little loophole because everybody's aging, right? And we want to be zestful aging once we start the adult journey. So now I've been able to sort of use that little loophole, and anybody who has a really interesting story, I just say come on in because it's really about zestful living. For example, I don't know if you're familiar with Sophie Podermans. She just wrote a book, and I just interviewed her yesterday on seducing and killing Nazis.
Oh, wow.
3 teenage women. Hani Shah, I don't know if you know her.
I've heard,
you probably.
yeah.
Okay, so she just wrote a book about Hani and her 2 other, at that time, teenage companions who would lure high-ranking Nazis into the woods in Holland and shoot them. One of them was 14.
Gosh.
And they were part of the resistance. And the woman, Sophie, who wrote this book, is not a middle-ager. Well, she's not quite 40. I thought, this is the most fascinating story of resistance I've heard. And I didn't say, I'm sorry, you're not 50. Let me know when you turn 50 and we'll do a show,
Yeah.
So it's given me the advantage of interviewing younger people who are doing things that contribute to a better world.
Yeah, definitely. I'm the same. I started off thinking about I'm just going to do women over 40. But actually, I've met so many younger women that have really inspiring stories. I thought, actually, we can all learn from each other, can't we?
That's right. That was a little trick. And when I went in, I saw my analytics, which I'm not that great at understanding, but at Pinterest, they're a little simpler. I thought, who are these 20-year-olds who are listening to my show? Many of them, my listeners, are younger than I am. So I felt like I had to kind of respect my audience as well.
And I guess, how does that fit in with your psychotherapy work? Because it is a lot of work to run a podcast, and you're doing both.
It is a lot of work. I'm not going to be doing it forever. Hopefully, I'll be retiring from psychotherapy practice in the next 5 years. it's a lot of work, but it's so, as I'm sure you know, it's so deeply satisfying. And I tell people when I talk about the podcast that, I've spoken to people like you, like Joe Mosley,
Mm.
your posse,
Yeah,
people, the Running Granny, Action Nan, people. A lot of the UK folks are quite a bit ahead of the US in really acknowledging the and appreciating the value of women. As Margaret Mead said, a woman after menopause they're forced to be reckoned with. And
yeah.
I see a lot of people in the UK really grabbing onto that, and in the US too. We're a little bit behind you in that. So
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you about that if there was a difference. So it's really interesting that you've said that. That
also Australia is
yeah,
ahead of the US. They're just, the US is just distracted by its, I don't know, its problems right now. But yeah, I would say that Canada also is ahead. I have a
mm,
lot of, so it's a lot to do, but it has really literally changed my life. I mean, my work as a psychotherapist has been, of course, deeply satisfying. I love it. I miss my clients. It's all telehealth now. So
yeah, of
I
course.
don't get although I do see their bedrooms and their pets, which I never saw before, because they bring their phones into, their, one of them was like still in bed, and I thought, this is, of course, a millennial. I'm like, I don't need to see your whole pajama kind of out of bed thing, but she was cute. So yeah, it's a lot of work. I mean, I don't edit my own podcast, but I don't do nearly the media stuff that I wish I could.
Mm,
And it's just a matter of trying to balance your own mental health with the stuff that needs to be done. And as you know, there's no end, right? You can
yeah.
always promote more. You can always write another blog. You can always go on another show or
Mm,
invite another guest. But at this point, I've really had to I've really had to discipline myself that that person will still be there.
yeah,
And I have a problem I have a long queue of folks that are waiting to go up.
yeah,
And it's a bit, I don't want to be disrespecting and say, oh, remember when we interviewed a year ago? Now
yeah.
so I'm still working that out.
And how did you get into, because you specialize in eating disorders and kind of health issues with your
Mm.
psychotherapy, how did you decide to specialize in that area? Because it's not an area that's talked about very often.
And not for middle age,
No.
certainly, although now more and more, because what we're seeing is some of the major clinics like Renfrew, which is, they've just got clinics popping up and they've been around forever, very well respected. They're seeing a huge spike in people having to come in to do residential treatment. That means you leave your home, you move
Mm,
in there and get treatment. They have a spike for people over 45. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like up 35%.
wow.
So,
Is that
it's,
during was this during the COVID?
that's a great question. And that stat was probably in January. I
Right.
don't know what it is in COVID. I'm going to guess, because I sort of understand
Yeah.
the psychology and the psyche of this, is, I would say it's the same or worse, because now you have even less control. Now you really don't know what's going to be happening with your job, your kids, and so that sort of lends itself to, how do I help myself feel calmer? I know I'll count fat grams, I'll count
Mm,
carbs. But the way it came to be is, I think this is a story that probably resonates with a lot of us. I got good training. I have dedicated myself to my practice, and then you get pretty comfortable, right? You get like, I pretty much know what I'm doing.
yeah.
I'm not, um, uh, I don't assume that I'm always right, but I kind of got it.
Mm,
And I just was sort of being a little bit, feeling a little in a rut. And also my clients were talking about, now I'm 50, now I'm 55. my kids leaving? What about my relationship with my son? What do I do with myself now? When do I retire? How do I retire? What do I want to do? So it was very much like I was hearing it through my clients, and I was having some of the similar questions. I have a son who's a young adult,
Mm.
and I thought, okay, I've got a lot of years in front of me, but I've got more years behind me, so I've
Mm.
got to start being a little more thoughtful about what I can offer. And I had somebody helping me with an online course I did on mindful eating. And he said, you would love podcasting. One day you should really consider that. Well, being the person I am, who is quick to jump, not always as quick to think, but I called a friend of mine who's a fly fisher woman. She's a guide. She does a lot of work with breast cancer survivors and teaches them how to fly fish, which is a very serene kind of I don't know, I guess you call it a sport,
Yeah.
and you go in beautiful places, right? So
Yeah.
it was had this incredible healing effect, and I thought I'm going to call Vicky up. I did a little retreat with her, and I knew she was a good talker and a lovely
Mm.
woman. I said, can I come over and talk to you? And she said, sure. So I just brought my laptop. I did it in GarageBand, and she was phenomenal. You can hear her. I think I'm like 180 interviews in. I think she was like the first or second interview. And after I spoke with her on her porch with my little laptop, I thought, oh my goodness, I was made to do this. I
Mm.
mean, you know how it is when you're um, doing something you love, and time just, it doesn't even exist. You're in this, I was going to say
Yeah.
bubble, which is
Yes.
your name, but I was like, I was totally tuned in on every channel, and I just felt her passion and her her love of this sport, which is fairly unusual for a woman.
Mm.
You're touching the fish because they're
Yeah.
throwing them back. I mean, you're up close and personal with those
Yeah.
little trout. And I thought, wow, can I do more of this?
Mm.
So then I just started, I thought about what do I love? And I love talking to women. I love talking about resilience. I love talking about courage, all things that, women have so many interesting stories because
Mm.
once you've gotten this age, life has, as one of my clients says, has been lifey. And, you probably haven't escaped some tragedies, some deep disappointments, some things that you didn't expect. And I just love hearing stories of people who have done gorgeous
Yeah.
things. They're ordinary and extraordinary.
Yeah, I completely relate to that, and I think it's just filled my life with passion really for meeting
Oh,
new people. And do you think it's the case that women have, for so many years in history, not had the chance to use their voice and be heard? And now we're all building communities where women can share themselves and their stories. So it always surprises me how honest people are when you have conversations with them.
yes, yes. I bet that's true. I mean, I'm coming from a different background because I see mostly women in my practice. So I
Mm.
have a little skewed view. I mean, they're always on, well, I hope they're mostly honest with me because I'm their therapist. So
Yes.
I don't have I hear stories that are deeply personal and difficult. So I haven't quite that experience, but I it and I see this, and I guess it's becoming a little bit repetitious or trite because I hear other women podcasters say this, but it has absolutely changed my life. And um, for us here in the U.S., who have a brain, we're really struggling. I mean, we're just desperate and horrified and heartbroken, and so to know, excuse me, to know that there are women like you, women like the Joe Mosleys in the
Mm.
world, women, um, like the Sophie Poldermans, the woman that wrote the book on Nazis. I'm like,
Yeah.
it has helped me not, it has helped me be able to live a hopeful and optimistic life,
Mm.
because all that's going on in the world, um, and it's heartbreaking. And I
Yeah.
think that it's really hard to overcome that unless you have something to grab onto.
And it's interesting, when your job as a psychotherapist, you're the one that has to listen and take things on board and help people. And through the podcast, it strikes me that you're actually getting as much help in your own life through listening to other people's stories, because it's giving you that invigoration and that inspiration to motivate you in life. So you kind of get both sides of it, don't you?
I did a presentation yesterday for Podfest, and I was talking about, I'm writing a book on how to interview. And I talk about using my psychotherapy skills, not to psychotherapize my guests, but I talk about it as it's a dance, and it's thinking about in terms of a mini relationship. It's not a Q&A or an interrogation. It's more like a dance. It's more mutual. It's more, I'm sensitive to your pacing and I'll meet you there. They're
Yeah.
not going to say, oh, hi, thank you for being on my podcast. And then I'm going to start with, I have a gentleman who lost his daughter to domestic violence. His daughter's boyfriend killed her.
Mm,
And
gosh.
you don't start out with like, wow, what's it like to be, you
Yeah.
start out with, you're an advocate for domestic violence, tell me your story, and then you tune in.
Mm,
So you really are in a relationship for those few minutes, for those 30 minutes. And that's how I like to do it.
yeah.
And then you leave feeling, you use these beautiful words like, it's invigorating, even though listening carefully is tiring. It can be tiring, and really trying to follow, it's tiring, but you leave that interview, if it's gone well, energized and enriched and feeling like that deep connection with another human. I mean, we're mammals. This is what we're made to do.
Yeah.
We're made to connect with our people. And so when it works, it feels like the air you breathe.
Yeah.
It's
No,
vital.
how do you switch off from it though? Because I can imagine that through your psychotherapy, they're really quite serious, quite intense sessions. And then you're going on to listening and concentrating and talking to people on your podcast in your spare time. How do you allow yourself space to kind of not have any of that in your mind? Do you ever switch off from it?
Oh, I'm an avid tennis player,
Ah,
and I have a group of these delightful, vibrant, funny, smart women, and I'm on the court a lot.
mm,
And I think they're like me, so they don't mind when I say goofy, corny things. And I say, can I just stop for a minute and tell you there's no place I'd rather be? It's just hitting a yellow fuzzy ball and focusing on that ball and trying my best to uh, um, concentrate and do what I'm supposed to do. It's like a vacation for me, because I'm with my people. I'm usually outside, like now. I'm
mm,
going to be playing tonight. And it's, you can't think about trauma. You can't think about, you know, pain and suffering and difficulty and any of that
mm.
when you're supposed to be focusing on this silly little ball. So it uses a whole different part of my brain. And I'm also an avid knitter. And
Right.
knitting, as many people know, is incredibly soothing. And it's almost,
As
there's a
long as you can do it, I can't knit. I've tried so many times and
yeah,
it's so frustrating.
well, that's not what we're looking for. So, even like if I've had a really hard session, or if things are particularly bleak, or if I've seen some Facebook news that or something that I'm like, oh, he did not just say that. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, how embarrassing. If I knit, it's almost like, it gets you into this really deep relaxation. So, and I kayak a lot. So I'm
Hmm.
very much into nature. I know you're a big walker.
Yeah.
Walking is my thing, nature's my thing, and I like to bake. So there's things that I deliberately do to say, I gotta balance it, but still, sometimes, I'll come up from my office and I've had people are not doing well, as I'm sure you know,
Hmm.
and it's heavy. It's really
Yeah.
heavy. Yeah.
Well, why do you think that we're not represented in the right way in the media and advertising? Because look at the list of things that you've just said that you love doing. You love playing tennis, you're kayaking, you're active, you're sporty, you're out in nature. Older women are not represented in that way in the media and advertising, certainly not in the UK. They're so far behind in portraying us in the right way in the media. Is that the same in the States?
Oh, well, we think of ourselves as rather sporty. I mean, as you know, if you can spot an American in a minute in Europe because they're wearing, you call them trainers.
Yeah.
They're wearing a baseball hat that says Mets on it
Mm.
and sneakers. You're like, yeah, there's an American. They don't know how to dress. We think of ourselves as rather sporty, and women, I mean, we've got Serena Williams, look at that
Yeah.
phenomenon.
Yeah.
um I don't know that. I think women are in sport. Of course, there was a lawsuit with the U.S. soccer team because they weren't paid as much. So there's definitely, still we have some ways to go, but it's advertisers have caught on, and now they're like, you have to have this kind of yoga pants, right?
Mm.
You have to have these kind of sneakers. You have to have, look at Serena, or look at the other women at sport. You want to look like them. So it's sporting here, I think, is a little bit different because how we fancy ourselves, so
Mm.
outdoors and pioneering.
Well, good. So that means we'll catch up with you at some point, I hope. Can we talk about your work as a psychotherapist with the eating disorders? Because with older women, I know there's lots of talk and communications about younger girls, but you very rarely hear work and older women coming out and talking about it openly.
Mm-hmm.
And so to come across you who that's what you specialise in, I think is amazing, because why don't we talk about it? Why are we all so scared about being so open about it?
I think that's a great question, and I think you're probably you travel in circles where it it rears its ugly head. So
Mm.
what we're seeing, eating disorders are quite an elegant solution. Unfortunately, they have terrible consequences. Think of a situation where everything is simplified. It binds your anxiety. You don't have to think about global warming. You don't have to think about, if you're gonna, if the stock market's gonna crash. All you have to think about is, what am I gonna eat for breakfast? How big is it? I can weigh it, and then tomorrow I can go on my scale and see I've accomplished something.
Mm.
Wow. Before I was this much, now I'm this much. I mean, where in life do we get that kind of feedback that we're accomplishing something? Not every day,
Mm.
pretty rarely. So, what we see is that women, sort of in the 45, starting around 45, are starting to say, wait, my body's changing. I'm not loving it, especially if you have a daughter. I find this to be sort of a cruel juxtaposition where your daughter is blossoming
Yeah.
into this, like, you know, in her sexual prime,
Mm.
looking smooth. Everything is
Tight and in the right place.
tied in her places. That's what I was trying to think. How do I say that? Everything is firm. Everything is smooth. There's no tough transitions on the hip. They're all, And then what happens to us? Perimenopause, menopause, and we're like, wow, this is real.
Mm.
This is an insult and a humility. somehow it feels like I'm being humiliated. And then things are dropping and drooping, and maybe you used to wear sleeveless, and now you feel like, oh, I can't wear sleeveless. I have crepey skin, all of this stuff. And maybe your kids are launching. Now, some of this I'm talking about pre COVID. This is sort of the general structure.
Yeah.
COVID makes it much worse. Then we add in, this is like a perfect storm, a situation where now there's gray divorce. You look at your partner and say, what else you got? Because that's not, I mean, we raised our kids, we did the carpool thing. You want to sit on the couch and watch the History Channel, and I want to go trekking somewhere.
Mm.
So then we get a situation where there's discontent, there's anxiety, there's what am I going to do in retirement? I've been a great mom. Maybe I have a lot of teachers in my practice, a great teacher. I've dedicated myself. And now what? Because my kids are leaving, my husband's sitting on the couch, um, and I don't have a life. My life has been kind of stripped away. I don't even know who I am at this point. But what I do know is if I start drinking kale smoothies and go to the gym pre-COVID, or go running, or do train for a marathon, people are going to really notice and say, look, oh, have you lost weight? Oh,
Yeah.
you look great. Who doesn't want to hear that when you're 45, 50, 50? Who doesn't want to hear you look great? And so there's this like hook. You want to look great, or you want to, so instead of having a kale smoothie and a piece of toast, now you just have a kale smoothie. And it becomes, you are in charge of the diet to begin with, and you say, oh, I'm going to put more vegetables, I'm going to have avocado on everything, and then it flips and the diet becomes the boss and says, no, you can't have a birthday cake, a piece of birthday cake. That's, you're terrible, you're disgusting, what are you thinking? And so then it becomes a compulsion and an obsession. And the problem is society just reinforces it. I mean, you look on Facebook, I'm like, juice cleanse, you have a liver. You do not need a juice cleanse. Your body already does that beautifully. It's millions of years in the making. You don't need to buy that at your grocery store. And so there's a lot of like Facebook nutritionists who say, only eat this, don't eat that. If you eat this, you're going to clog up your colon or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's over determined. There's so many forces. There's an emptiness and a need to hold on to something for dear life, to feel like you're successful, you're accomplished, you've got something to focus on other than
I've lost you, Nicole. Hang on a second. I've lost you. Something just happened. Just bear with me a second.
Sure.
I can hear you.
Yeah, okay.
Which is a good start.
Oh, you can't see me?
I can't see you. No.
Oh, that's funny. Okay. I'm not sure why. I can see you.
Oh, can you? Right. Aha, there I am.
Yay.
Sorry about that.
That's fine. So there's a lot that makes it very appealing and seductive, and then you feel like you have a structure to your life that's reliable, that you always can go to. Like 8 ounces of oatmeal is always 8 ounces of oatmeal. And then you go to the gym, and then people say, oh my gosh, you look so great. And then maybe your partner says, oh my gosh, you look so great. Maybe somebody on the street says, ooh, you're looking good. I mean, like, everybody wants to hear that, especially when we're having hot flashes and, these changes of life. So it gets really tricky. And the problem is the longer you do it, that you're in the grasp of this belief system, these obsessions, the longer it is to dig your way out. And what we have to do is say, like, really, what's more meaningful to you than being a certain size? Because
Yeah.
that's really, is that what you want on your tombstone? She was a perfect size 6.
Yeah.
Real, that's what you want. And so what we're looking at is sort of deep beliefs about oneself, what our worth is, how we look, why that's so important, and that it's hard to convince somebody that they're more than their pant size, or that they should be ashamed if they have stretch marks or cellulite. I mean, you've had babies. What do you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's concentrate on that miracle.
Yeah.
So it's not an easy sell, because you're really swimming upstream when women are saying, but now I can fit in these yoga pants. Now I can, people paying attention to me. It's a really hard thing to help people see at what cost.
Yeah. How do we change that?
Yeah.
How do we change that? Because it's at the heart of society, isn't it? It's our judgments on other people. It's our expectations, because we're bombarded by advertising, like you said, and marketing. How do you begin to change that? What would you like to see change to help improve things?
Well, I think it is starting to change here. We have something called HAES, HAES, Health at Every Size, and starting to really challenge the diet community. There's this, and I know in Europe too, there's this idea that thin is healthy, and those two things are not the same. You can be thin and healthy. You can be thin and unhealthy. You can be fat and very healthy. What you want to know is, what's your blood pressure? Are you able to do everything you want to do? Are you feeling good? Are you energized? Can you be active? What's your blood look like? Those are the markers of health, not what you weigh. So more and more science is challenging some of these very deeply held beliefs, even by physicians. The physicians are famous for just offhandedly saying you could lose 5 pounds. And then those people end up in my office saying, well, my doctor said I should lose 5 pounds. And I say, why? And they look at me like, well, I don't know. So, it's about challenging, and some of it is the patriarchy. I mean, you can't sell something to someone if they feel fine. Weight Watchers is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It's because there's repeat customers. If it works so well, why do we have to keep going back and back and back? And Oprah, no disrespect to Oprah, but it's one of the best financial decisions she's ever made to buy into Weight Watchers. I mean, it's a perfect business.
Yeah, like you say, it's a cycle. But what I love about your podcast, though, is by having guests on that talk about how enriched their lives are because they found passions and they've done amazing things, that's showing that, your size is irrelevant. It's actually about living life and embracing it and getting out there and doing your own thing, isn't it?
Doing your thing. And one thing that I do, which I'm sure is very weird, is on the instruction form for when my guests, and I don't know if you remember this, when my guests are preparing to be on my podcast, I write down, I will not talk about diets. I say it in a nice way. Not interested in diets. Please don't mention diets, because I am anti-diet. I'm pro-health, and I love to eat good, delicious, beautiful food. However, I also like chocolate, and I'm not going to not eat chocolate because I think that makes me a bad person or something.
Yeah, me too. And as a model, I can say that.
That's right. That's right.
Life's too short.
For sure.
It's been such a pleasure to talk to you, Nicole. Thank you so much. It's so interesting, and I love what you do. My last question that I ask all my
Yeah,
guests now, women
yeah,
are
yeah.
so bad at receiving compliments about themselves. So
Mhm.
if you could give yourself a compliment, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, I love that question. Um, let me think, let me think.
Yes.
You don't care about my tennis serve, I'm sure. It's got a lot better. I feel like I, I do a good job connecting with people and helping them feel valued and understood. And I, I like, I appreciate the passion I have in bringing joy into a very dismal world right now. I'm putting this out. This is my legacy to try to counterbalance some of the negativity and heartbreak that's all around us. That I'm illustrating these fantastic guests, yourself
Yeah.
included, and saying, "Look, world, look at this." I
Mm.
mean, I know you don't want to get out of bed right now, but look, I want to show you what people are doing, and
Mm.
I think that that's a value, and I'm proud of that.
That's lovely. Thank you so much. And how can people find you?
Just go right to zestfulaging.com. We're in 92 countries. Yesterday, I saw on my analytics a new country. I thought, I do not know that country.
Yay.
Northern Macedonia.
Oh, wow.
I had to look it up. So that was
Brilliant.
delightful.
Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you for getting up earlier this morning, and enjoy the rest of your day.
It's lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.